You are? Good. Good evening. Good evening.
I'd like to call to order tonight's meeting. The first order is to approve the minutes from the February 26th, 2024 meeting.
I'll approve them.
I will second.
Gonna vote? Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We'll go over to the first agenda item, which is Brent Biddle. I'll turn it over to our solicitor to start the discussion.
Very good. Is Mr. Biddle present? Very good. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Christopher Hartman. I'm the solicitor for the zoning hearing board. And at the table at the front with me are the members of the zoning hearing board for Brook Township, Jeff Emberger, John Biddle, and David Rogers. And we have two hearings that are on our agenda for tonight. And we're going to go first with the Biddle hearing, and then after the conclusion of the Biddle hearing, we will do the Fisher hearing. So those of you who are here for those hearings, please be aware that we're going to do one before the other. So with that introduction, I'm going to announce that this is the place and time designated by notice to consider the application of Brent Biddle for a special exception from sections 27-1033.g and 27-402.b.3 of the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance as amended to operate a limited impact home occupation for a landscaping business on his residential property. The property which is the subject of the application for the above special exception is located at 65 Fox View Lane, being tax parcel number 22-08-65.6. The property is located in the neighborhood residential NR zoning district of Honeybrook Township. Before proceeding any further, I want to ask if there's anyone present who wishes to be recognized as a party to this proceeding. The applicant is always a party to the proceeding. The township is always a party to the proceeding. But if there's any other person present who wishes to be recognized as a party, please be aware that party status would give you the right to call witnesses, to cross-examine other witnesses, and to appeal the decision of the zoning hearing board. Is there any person present other than the applicant who wishes to be recognized as a party to the Biddle zoning hearing board application? Yes, sir. Could you identify your name and address, please?
My name is Dan Cregan,
Can you spell your last name, Dan?
C-R-E-G-A-N,
And what is your address?
43 Foxview Road.
And do you, can you tell us the location of your property relative to the applicant's property?
I am right next door.
Okay. It is my opinion as the legal advisor to the board that Mr. Cregan does have standing to be recognized as a party, as an adjoining property owner. Mr. Biddle, do you have any objection to Mr. Cregan being a party to this hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I don't see any other person present who is identifying themselves as a party to the Biddle hearing, so I'm going to continue to move on then. I want to inform everyone that anyone who seeks to offer evidence regarding this matter would be, or is required to come forward and be sworn before testifying before the board. Further, public notice of this hearing was duly advertised in the Daily Local on May 20 and May 26, 2024. Adjoining property owners were notified by mail of this hearing on May 17, 2024. Notice of this hearing was posted on the property by Edgar Nelson, zoning officer for the township, on May 24, 2024. At this time, the board offers the following exhibits into evidence. Board Exhibit 1, the application of Brent Biddle for the property located at 65 Foxview Lane, Honeybrook Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. And all these board exhibits have been pre-marked. Board Exhibit 2 is the notice of the hearing, tonight's hearing. Board Exhibit 3 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Daily Local. Board Exhibit 4 is the affidavit of service by mail of those persons who received notice of the hearing by mail. Board Exhibit 5 is the affidavit of posting of the property with a copy of the notice of tonight's hearing. Board Exhibit 6 is a letter of the Board of Supervisors of Honeybrook Township dated May 9, 2024, taking the position of support on the special exception application. And Board Exhibit 7 is a copy of the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance as amended. Mr. Biddle, do you have any objection to those exhibits? I see, no, you do not. Mr. Cregan, do you have any objections? Can you speak so that the stenographer can make that part of the record?
No objection.
All right, thank you very much. With those administrative introductions, I'm now going to turn to Mr. Biddle and ask you if you would allow yourself to be sworn by the stenographer.
Adjournment. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
For the record, state your name.
Brent Biddle.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Biddle. Are you the owner of the property at 65 Foxview Road?
With my wife, yeah.
Okay. And did you submit the application that is pending before the zoning hearing board?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain what the purpose of your application is?
For a limited home use of my property to run a landscaping business.
Okay. Where is that use currently located?
At 65 Fox Road.
All right. So you have, is it correct that you've been operating the landscaping business at the property? Is that correct?
Correct.
But you didn't, up until this point at least, have a zoning permit for that? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I didn't realize I needed
Okay. How long have you been operating at the property?
20 years.
So, there are certain requirements for approval of a special exception for the limited impact home occupation.
Right.
So I'd like you to describe for us so we can review whether or not you meet those requirements. Who works in the business?
Total,
Yes.
myself, and I have another employee that comes and picks up the truck. Basically, can I just speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, I use it just to store my equipment in my trucks. I don't have deliveries made to my house. I don't have signs. I don't have customers that come to my house. we just park my trucks there. I have a pole barn, and we store my equipment in the pole barn and park my trucks there. And then we leave in the morning and we go to work. I mow grass most of the time, Monday, Thursday.
Okay. You say you have a whole building, is that correct?
Correct.
And what are the dimensions of that building?
It's 30 by 40.
Do you use the entire building for your business?
No. A third of it is like a workshop, you know, it's like a tool, you know. I got a wood burning stove in it, you know what I mean? I built birdhouses, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Your application indicates that that you use part of the residence and you use part of the whole building.
Correct.
And what I want you to be aware of is that for this type of use, under the zoning ordinance, there's a 600 square foot maximum. So the combination of the use of your home and the use of the whole building can exceed 600 square feet. On the face of your application, it looks like you are indicating 600 square feet of the whole building and 100 square feet of the house, if I read your application.
Approximately. I mean, I didn't measure it.
Well, what's going on in your house? That
It's just that I have an office in the basement. But that's really a computer.
Okay. If the board were to limit your use to no more than 600 square feet on the entire property, would you be able to comply with that?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
All right, because that is a requirement of the ordinance, and based on how you presented your application, it appeared that you were asking for approval to exceed the 600 square feet, and that would not be allowed without a variance.
Yeah, it's probably about 600 total. It's probably about 400 or 500 square feet in the pole barn. The mowers are 5 foot deck, so 60 inches wide, and they're in a straight line, parked in the pole barn. So, I mean, technically, I don't use the whole inside the pole barn, where it's just a strip for the storage of the mowers, and when it's raining or whatnot.
Okay, so, right, as I understand your testimony,
So 600, yes, I could do
okay,
under 600 easily.
How many mowers do you own?
I own 4. Not all of them. I own 4.
right, how many trailers do you have for that?
2 landscape, 16 foot, I believe they are, landscape trailers, and 2 Dodge 1500 pickup trucks.
So are the trailers and the mowers within the whole building?
It depends if it's gonna rain or not. If it's not gonna rain, I can leave the mowers on the trailers and just park them on the side of the pole barn. You can't see them from the road. I have a lot of trees on my property.
Well, on your drawing that was attached to your application, you indicate pine trees along Parksview Road, and then it looks like trees and bushes around the house, and on, I'm not sure, let me show you your drawing. Tell me,
Yeah.
is Fox View at the south end of your property or the north end of your property, so I can talk about directions when I look at your drawing?
I would say north.
Okay, so Fox View is at the north.
My front, or my house faces Fox.
Okay. So then, would it be true, when I'm looking at the drawing that you submitted with the application, the right side would be the west side of the property, and the left side would be the east side, is that?
I think it's the other way.
All right, because I thought you said Fox View was at the north end of the property.
Right.
No,
It's on the south side.
south side, sorry.
Okay, Fox View is at the south side, okay.
Sorry.
All right, well then let's, let me reorient
Yeah,
my notes.
because the right side of my house is towards down now, so that's the east side.
Okay, all right, thank you for that reorientation. So, if Fox View is at the south side of your property, then along the east side, your drawing indicates that there's a series of bushes and trees along the entire property line.
Correct.
And then at the south side of your, no, the north side of your property, which is the furthest side from Fox View, your drawing shows a row of pine trees, correct?
The north side?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then along the west side, your drawing shows a privet hedge, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Which side of your property is your neighbor who is here tonight located?
East side.
He's on the east side.
East side.
Okay. So the pole barn is on the east side of your property?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What side of the pole barn do you park those mowers on?
The east side.
Okay, so you park them on the side of the pole barn closest to
Mr. Cregan's
Mr. Cregan's?
side, yeah.
Okay. What time do you normally leave the property to go to work?
7:30, 8 o'clock. Usually after I put my daughter on the bus.
What time do you return?
Depends on the day. I mean, it could be from 3 o'clock to 6, 7 o'clock, depending on how thick the grass is growing or,
Okay. And what are the months of the year that you're operating the business?
from April until November.
Okay.
Sometimes March, I would say March until November. Yeah, lately we haven't had a lot of snow or anything, so it's kind of gotten warmer. You know, early,
Tell me again, how long you've been operating the business there?
20 years.
And when was the pole building constructed?
2004, 5, approximately. I had a permit from the township here to build it when I built it, so it would be on file exactly.
Do you remember what use you indicated when you got that permit?
Storage and stuff,
Okay.
and workshop, well,
Do you do work on mowers at your property?
no. Usually I take it to Honeybrook Outdoor Power, or Honeybrook Hardware, or I used to take it to Frames, Power Equipment. These mowers are, pretty, I'm not that cat, I mean, you know.
All right, so you take them.
I mean, if it's something simple, like a belt, yes. I can fix a belt, but, most of the time, if something goes, it's where you have to take it to a person who knows what they're doing.
Okay. All right, so your testimony is that you don't do any major servicing of the equipment on site?
No.
On the side towards Mr. Cregan, how dense is that, the vegetation? I mean, can you see through it, or is it dense enough?
Sparsely. I mean, it's pretty dense, but you can, here and there, you can see.
All right.
But it's pretty, especially during this time of year when the, trees have leaves and all, pretty dense. There's a big, forsythia bush that kind of goes the whole way along there as well, which stays green all year except for in the spring, obviously. I don't know pretty well.
Do you do any, like trimming of trees or,
I do
brush?
landscaping, like mulching, things like that. Trees I stay away from because it's a different kind of insurance that you need to do tree work. It's dangerous.
Do you bring any debris home?
No. I take it to Honeycliff landfill or to Sweetwater, which is where they make mulch over there. So anytime that I have like sticks or stuff like that, you can dump it either at the dump for a nominal fee, or you can dump it at Sweetwater if it's just branches or things like
All
that.
right, so you don't bring that stuff home at all? You take it
No.
directly from your work site to the disposal location?
90% of the time, sometimes it'll be in the trailer if I'm not done in time to get to the dump. They'll have it covered on the trailer.
But you don't unload it on your...
No.
Is your parking on a solid surface, or is it in the grass, is it on gravel? The trailers that you're parking at your
It's
property?
on gravel.
On gravel, too. And the Dodge trucks are also parked on gravel?
Yeah,
Or on, well, what I'm getting at
they're
is...
not parked on grass ever.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I've never parked on grass. Sometimes they're parked in my driveway. If they're not connected to the trailer, I use it, as a vehicle as well, personal.
All right, and your testimony is you only have one employee who is not a family member, who comes to the site every day, and you have no signage, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. We're going to ask the board if they have any questions for Mr. Biddle.
I have a question. Don't really make sense to me, but I'll ask it anyway. We got an email here from February 25th at 5:05 PM that says, to whom it may concern, I'm the owner of 65 Fairview, Honeybrook. Brent Biddle is my husband, and he has permission to have a business at this location.
That's my wife.
She's just acknowledging that you're...
I think they had said that she needed to send something in.
Okay, yeah, I was sort of wondering why, like, she was...
Because my father-in-law, it was my father-in-law's house originally,
Okay.
and me and my wife bought my father-in-law's house.
So she's in total approval of your,
Okay.
that's sort of what I gathered, but I didn't know why.
Good, I didn't see that email.
We had that, so I'm thinking like, what's going on here? Okay. Well, a happy wife makes a happy life, so.
So, any other questions from the board for this witness? All right, at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Cregan if he has any questions for Mr. Biddle, and I would like to clarify that this is the time for questions, and you will have an opportunity for testimony after Mr. Biddle's testimony is completed. So do you have any questions for Mr. Biddle?
I have no questions.
All right. So at this point, Mr. Biddle, we're going to conclude your testimony, but you'll continue to be sworn. So if there's something that comes up before we're finished where we have more questions for you, you will be available to answer those questions, and you'll still be under oath. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cregan, would you like to present some testimony?
Sure.
Okay. Would you allow yourself to be sworn by the stenographer?
Sure.
And would you please come closer so that everybody can hear you up front?
Raise your hand. Do you swear the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Just state your name first, please.
Dan Cregan.
Thank you.
And Dan, you already indicated when we admitted you as a party that your address is the adjoining property. And can you just confirm that now that you're under oath?
Correct.
Okay, very good. This is your opportunity to tell the board any information that you would like to share with regard to the application of Mr. Biddle that's pending before the board. So please tell us what you want us to hear.
I've lived next to Brent for 17 years. His business has never been a hindrance on us, my family. I wouldn't even know he was there half the time. You know, I'll see trailer leave in the morning sometimes, and you come home at night. It's never too early, it's never too late. Noise is never an issue. Parking never seems to be an issue. And if anything, Brent has been a blessing to my family. In times when my mom breaks, he's come over and cut my grass. Sometimes I'm even asking. So, and he's plowed my driveway. At times when I come home, the snowstorm is already done. So he's been a wonderful neighbor. I couldn't say much more than that in regards to situation. I can't even see the stuff for the most part. The vegetation's pretty thick between our properties, so you know his whole barn, his equipment, I can barely see it. So it has no impact on my family at all.
Very good. Glad to hear it. Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Cregan? Mr. Biddle, do you have any questions for Mr. Cregan? Okay. Sorry, you didn't indicate you wanted to be a party, but now you have your hand up.
I just wanted to verify, I feel the same as Mr. Cregan. I live on the other side of
Okay.
Mr. Biddle.
Now that you put your hand up, I'm going to make you tell us who you are
Okay,
and put your comments under oath.
okay.
So, first of all, tell us your name.
Ronald Dombrowski,
Can you spell your last name?
D as in David, O-M-B-R-O-W-S-K-I,
And what is your address?
77 Foxview Road.
And you live across the street?
Nope, I'm right next door to him.
Right
I'm
next
on the west side of his property.
Very good. So that's how you know the directions of the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Dombrowski, would you allow yourself to be sworn by the stenographer?
Yes.
Raise your hand. Do you swear the testimony that you just gave and any future testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Dombrowski, you were beginning to make some comments before you were sworn. I'd like you to complete your comments about Mr. Biddle's operation from your experience.
Mr. Biddle's operation has no impact on the Orland family. As he said, he keeps the mowers inside his shed. The trailers are either in the shed or on the side. He's a good neighbor. He comes over and cuts our grass. In the wintertime, since I'm 76, he plows our driveway for us. I couldn't ask for a better neighbor. And as far as the business is concerned, we have no complaints whatsoever about his business. He keeps it to himself. You wouldn't even know it was a landscaping business if you drove by.
Thank you, Mr. Dombrowski.
You're welcome.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Dombrowski? Mr. Creed, do you have any questions for Mr. Dombrowski?
Nice to meet you.
Mr.
I
Biddle?
see you, but I don't have met you.
Mr. Biddle, any questions for Mr. Dombrowski? Okay. Unless there's someone else who wishes to speak on this matter, I'm going to recommend to the board that we admit all the board exhibits and close the testimony. And at this point, the board can consider action on the application. Do you wish to have some deliberations in executive session with me, or do you wish to immediately take some public action on this? It's up to the board. Okay. The only recommendation I would make is to just confirm that the use will stay within the 600 square feet as provided in the ordinance, and that Mr. Biddle's business continues to operate on the basis of the testimony that he presented tonight. So, with those conditions,
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
okay, so be it. So that is the conclusion. The decision of the board is to approve a special exception with conditions that it stay within 600 square feet and that you operated in accordance with your testimony. The board has a legal obligation to issue a written decision within 45 days after tonight's hearing. I anticipate it will be much less than that, but that is what our legal obligation is. And if any of the parties wish to challenge the written decision, they would have an additional 30 days after the written decision is issued to file an appeal. So I'm going to treat Mr. Dombrowski as a witness only and Mr. Cregan as a party. So when we issue the written decisions, we'll be issuing a decision, a copy of the decision to Mr. Biddle and to Mr. Cregan. Very good. Okay. That concludes our first hearing. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
At this time, we have a second hearing to consider, and that is the application of David E. Fisher for a variance from section 27-1702.A of the Brook Township zoning ordinance as amended to allow a retail use in the agricultural A zoning district of Brook Township. Also, a variance from section 27-1703.81 to allow the use on a lot smaller than 10 acres. Further, a variance from section 27-802.E to allow a building to be built in a community identified flood hazard area based upon soil classification. And further, a special exception under section 27-802.F2 to allow the parking driveway areas to encroach on the community identified flood hazard area based upon soil classification, all under the Brook Township zoning ordinance as amended, in order to relocate an existing market use from a neighboring property currently located at 941 Compass Road to the subject property. The property which is the subject of the application for the above special exception is located at 991 Compass Road, being tax parcel number 22-6-42.1A. The property is located in the agricultural A zoning district of Brook Township. Before proceeding any further, I would identify who will be a party to tonight's hearing. Now, the applicant has a representative who is here tonight. Would you please identify yourself?
My name is Benjamin Craddock with Lancaster Civil Engineering Company.
And before we proceed any further, I'm going to again look around the audience and ask, is there any other person present here tonight who wishes to be recognized by the zoning hearing board as a party to tonight's hearing, the hearing of David E. Fisher? Yes, sir. Do you have your hand up?
Yep. Scott Thompson, Thompson. And
And where do you live?
to my understanding, I'm an adjacent property owner. However, that might not be the case, because I think there were two different properties at one time.
Okay. Well, even if you're not adjacent, are you near to
Yes.
this property? Okay.
I live at 2455, that's 2455 Cambridge Road.
Mr. Craddock, in your capacity as the representative for the applicant, are you familiar with 2455 Cambridge Road? And do you agree that that's a nearby property?
Yes, and yes.
Okay. My recommendation to the board is that you would recognize Mr. Thompson as a party to the hearing due to his property being located either adjacent or nearby the applicant's property. Is that acceptable to the board?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Thompson, we will recognize you as a party. Is there any other person other than Mr. Thompson who wishes to be recognized as a party to tonight's hearing? Yes, sir.
Isaac Fisher, FISHER, I'm joining landowner.
And what is,
1063 Compass Road.
Mr. Craddock, are you familiar with 1063 Compass?
I can't find that on my plan.
It's across Cambridge.
Across the zone. Sorry, you said 1063? Okay, yes.
All right. So, on the basis of Isaac Fisher being an adjacent or nearby property owner, I would recommend that the board recognize him as a party as well. Is that agreeable to the board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other person in the audience tonight who wishes to be recognized as a party to this hearing? I see no indication of that, so we're going to proceed on the basis of Scott Thompson and Isaac Fisher being parties to the hearing for David E. Fisher. Now, I have some more preliminary matters we need to cover. I want to make everyone aware that anyone who presents testimony tonight at this hearing must either be sworn or affirm their testimony. Anyone who is a party has a right to present witnesses or to appeal the decision of the zoning hearing board or to cross-examine any other witnesses that are presented. Public notice of this hearing was duly advertised in the Daily Local on May 20 and May 26, 2024. Adjoining property owners were notified by mail of this hearing on May 17, 2024. Notice of this hearing was posted on the property by Edgar Nelson, zoning officer for Brook Township on May 24, 2024. At this time, the board offers the following exhibits into evidence. These have all been pre-marked. Board Exhibit 1 is the application of David E. Fisher for the property located at 939 Compass Road, Brook Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Board Exhibit 2 is an email from the applicant's representative dated May 15, 2024, amending the application to request a variance from section 27-802.E and a special exception from section 27-802.F. Board Exhibit 3 is a notice of the hearing of tonight's hearing. Board Exhibit 4 is a proof of publication of the notice in the Daily Local. Board Exhibit 5 is an affidavit of service by mail to the persons who received notice by mail of the hearing tonight. Board Exhibit 6 is an affidavit of the posting of the property with a copy of the notice of tonight's hearing. Board Exhibit 7 is the letter of the Board of Supervisors of Honeybrook Township dated May 9, 2024, taking no position on the variance requests from sections 27-1702.a and 27-1703.a.1. And finally, Board Exhibit number 8 is the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance as amended. Is there any objection by any of the three parties, the applicant and the two neighbors, to any of the board exhibits?
No objection from me.
Okay, I see no indication of any objection. So those exhibits will be made part of the record. At this time, I'm going to turn to Mr. Craddock as the applicant's representative to present testimony about tonight's hearing. Can you please begin by explaining to us what your role is with regard to this project, and then explain the project?
Sure. My role is Mr. Fisher's engineering consultant. He hired me to do a sketch plan to draw up the location of the relocated market, and basically to identify any hurdles that we would have to face in doing this relocation. And this was one of the major ones, was getting the use variance approved. So,
Did I have you sworn yet?
I think so.
Yeah, let's back up a step. Would you allow yourself to be sworn?
Yes.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And
And the statement that you already started, is that you agree that that's subject to your oath tonight?
yes.
Okay, very good. So, please continue.
Solicitor Hartman, the first thing I'd like to do is officially withdraw the last two relief requests that you mentioned. I had sent an email asking to be added to the application. After I had submitted the application, the township zoning officer had pointed out to me that the soils that we were planning to build on were a type of soil that was listed as alluvial in the zoning ordinance and the flood ordinance. And what that means is that it's basically a soil that the floodplain ordinance identified as flooding regularly. So she suggested that we add that variance and that special exception, unless we could get a soil scientist to go out there and test the soils and confirm whether they were in fact alluvial soils. We were just able to do that Friday, and the soil scientist confirmed that in his opinion they're not alluvial. So I would like to officially withdraw the variance from section 27-802E and the special exception under section 27-802F2.
All right, that's great that you can withdraw those requests for relief under those two sections. Will you be supplying to the zoning officer at some point in the future a copy of your soil scientist report that confirms what you just told us tonight?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
This is an appropriate.
Yeah, that's good. Now, the gentlemen who wish to be parties, do you want to get a little closer so you can see what's on the plan? If you want to sit on my right in the front row so you can see.
So that leaves us with two variances that we're requesting. The first one is the variance to allow the use to be relocated next door, and the second one is a lot area variance. We're probably going to spend most of our time on the first one, so I'm going to start with that. I'm referring to the existing condition plan that we had submitted with our zoning application, and that shows an overall view of 3 properties that are as part of this project. The first one is the large property that the farm market currently exists on, and I'm calling that in the application the farm property. The second one is immediately south of that. It's a 1.8 acre property That's where we're hoping to relocate the market. We're calling that the property, if you follow the narrative. And then next door to the west is a, I think it's 6.4 acre property that Mr. Fisher also owns. I should say he owns all three of these properties. He also owns the properties right along Cambridge Road. That 6.4 acre property we're calling the Cambridge property. And Mr. Thompson lives right next door to that. And Mr. Fisher, Isaac Fisher, lives to the south across the street. I'm going to show the next plan, which is just a zoom in of the main property that we're talking about with the Cambridge property. The idea is to combine both of those properties into one property. We have a 1.8 and 6.4, or maybe an 8.2 acre property, and then relocate the market to that property. This next page just shows those being joined together with an outline of the market where it will go. That is the proposed conditions plan. And then sheet 4 was included in our application as well. That's a detail of the proposed lot where we want to relocate. I think I'll stay here for now. Please let me know if you want me to go back to any of those other plans. Yeah, so like I said, the variance to relocate the use, that was one of the first things when I mentioned to David, when I talked to him about, the issues with moving the property, the market to this location. I know a use variance is not taken lightly, and there was something that, would be heavily scrutinized. We talked about if we do a special exception to expand the market on the current property. And so that's some of the things that we talked about. We talked about it with the zoning officer. And we came to the conclusion, at least we thought, that this might be one of those rare occasions where use variance actually makes some sense. Where relocating the market might be better overall than keeping it in its existing location or expanding it in that location. To me, the fact that the market is being relocated is a key point in the project and in the request for the variance. The market is an existing nonconformity. It was actually established back in 1992, so 32 years ago. Back in 1992, the farm property was owned industrial. And so what happened was the owner at that time was David Stolzfus. It wasn't Mr. Fisher. David Stolzfus applied for conditional use for farm-related business. Actually, the testimony from the supervisor's meeting where that was applied for was in the application. I don't know if you looked over that, but briefly, he described it as a dry goods store that would sell general merchandise. And it was described as a retail use, and that was approved by the Board of Commissioners, Board of Supervisors back in 1992. There's also some other documentation as far as the establishment of the use that was in the township records that was forwarded to us, and I included that in the application as well. There was a memo back in 2003 and then also 2009 that discussed the property and the ongoing use of the market. The 2003 memo discussed how it was a non-conforming use, and trying to think of the exact, trying to think of what brought that memo up. I just can't recall why that memo was written or what the purpose was. But it did talk about the market and how it was a use that was established lawfully. The 2009 memo describes how the dry goods store was then merged with the produce stand, and again discussed how it's not exactly allowed in the agricultural district any longer. That memo talked about how the existing store was basically consistent with what was approved, but again, did not meet any of the current definitions for an allowed use within the agricultural district. And that's pretty much where we're at right now. The market that Mr. Fisher operates accepts produce, accepts baked goods from local farms, probably 4 or 5 farms depending on the time of the year. still supports farms, still is farm-related, sells produce, sells baked goods, and groceries, but it's still very consistent with that dry goods store that was approved 30 years ago. One of the things that David cringed at a little bit was the fact that this is being defined as a grocery store. I don't disagree that that's probably the closest thing in the zoning ordinance that describes what Mr. Fisher does right now. But the idea of a grocery store is not quite what you see when you go into this market. You know, the nice thing is too, the fact that he does support local farms supplying them with goods. It does save those farms from trying to do their own rural occupation use. It saves them from having to establish their own market or their own roadside stand on their property. That brings me to, I'd like to describe a little bit more of the nature and the character of the use that we're asking to be relocated, because again, it's a retail use in an agricultural district, which sounds tough, right? It's a grocery store in an agricultural district. We had talked with the zoning officer about, well, maybe this is more appropriately described as it meets the definition of a rural occupation. It's very close to some of the things that are allowed as a rural occupation, but it doesn't meet all the requirements. A rural occupation could be a butcher shop, a bakery. I'm sorry.
Rural occupation.
Can be a butcher shop, a bakery, a craft shop. Can process locally produced agricultural products. It could be a dry goods store. Also, a rural occupation could sell household articles such as chairs, tables, and carpentry type items. That's a rural occupation that's allowed by right in the agricultural district. What's allowed by a special exception within the agricultural district is the wholesale agricultural produce auction, stockyard, and buying station. This is not that either. Buying station. This is not that. This is not close to that. But my point is that there are retail uses allowed within the agricultural district, sometimes at a much larger scale than what we're seeing here. And finally, an accessory use is the display and sale of nursery products. David does that at the store as well. My point is not saying that this should be defined as any one of those, but I think it is, one of the things that we wanted to do was just make sure that the board was clear on the characteristics of the market that's there now, right? So we're not talking about a supermarket, we're not talking about really a grocery store. In my opinion, Dave's opinion, it really is very close to a rural occupation, even though it doesn't quite meet all the requirements of a rural occupation. I did bring along some photos. I think you folks live in the township, you're maybe more familiar with the market than I am, but just for the record, I wanted to provide some photos of the interior and the exterior of the market, just for some context.
So we're going to treat this as applicant exhibit 1. Series of photographs. Does anyone have a set?
Those are just photos of the interior of the store showing the types of goods Mr. Fisher sells, local products, raw ingredients, baked goods. A couple of things you're seeing there is that it's really tight inside. The aisles are really tight. The shelves are packed tight as well. You'll see some of the exterior photos have some of the flowers that are for sale at the outside of the market and on the porch. One of the other things I wanted to mention is David looked at what his sales were for the first 4 months of the year. So I wanted to get an idea of like how many people really come in and out of this market on a given day. He estimates about 1,000 people a week, which is about 100, is that right? 1,000 people a week, open 6 days a week, which is close to 150 to 160 people a day. They open 11 hours a day, so it's about 15 people an hour. Those are his sales. Some people ride by car, some by buggy, so that's not a one-for-one as far as traffic, 15 people an hour. I looked at what the Institute of Transportation Engineers says that a grocery store would do. Grocery stores have about 10 people per hour per 1,000 feet. I estimate David has about 5,000 square feet there. A grocery store would do about 50 visitors per hour. David had about 15. So just, again, the character of what is there now is a much lower scale than what you might think of for a retail use. Also in the photos, I wanted to talk about too, not only is the use an existing non-conformity on that lot, but there are other zoning non-conformities on that lot as well. So one of the things is, I don't believe there's currently enough parking to meet the off-street parking requirements for the use. There are not adequate off-street loading spaces that the ordinance requires. David said right now a tractor trailer basically backs in off of the tent. Not really the greatest maneuver for bringing in a truck. And then once the truck does get onto the property, there's not a designated off-street loading space, so it can block cars, vehicles from parking in the access aisles. The parking lot does not comply with the interior circulation requirements. I don't think the
Sorry, let me just, and then,
sorry.
when you start to read stuff, that's when it's just too
All
fast.
right, sorry about that. It does not comply with the interior circulation requirements of the zoning ordinance. There is no stacking length provided. The parking spaces are right up against Route 10. So if somebody wants to pull in while somebody's leaving one of those parking spaces, there's no place for them to wait except in the middle of Route 10. There's no landscape islands at the end of the parking rows, and there's inadequate interior circulation lanes. So the parking lot is a little awkward the way folks sitting in front of the market back up, and then the other parking spaces are perpendicular to that. So this is not a zoning requirement, but the existing driveways, there's two of them, and they're pretty close together. Normally we'd like to have those spaced farther out or only one driveway. That doesn't meet one of the subdivision and land development ordinance requirements. That's not necessarily your concern, but the point is that there's an existing non-conforming use, but there's also some other existing non-conformities on the property that are not ideal. Relocating the market to the new property, in my opinion, doesn't make the non-conforming use worse, and it improves a lot of the other non-conforming uses on the existing property. You know, one of the things when we talk about a hardship are some of the unique characteristics of the property that David did not create. And really that would be the existing farm property has a lot of unique characteristics. The building is fairly close to the road. The building is close to a residential house. David really doesn't want to expand any closer to the existing residents that are there right now. There's not the opportunity on that lot to make some of these corrections that he'd like to make with the new lot. He would be allowed to expand as a special exception, as permitted by right, as long as he gets a special exception, which is a lower bar to clear. But he would correct a lot of the other non-conformities that would still be associated with that lot. I'm talking a lot here. There's a lot to go through. I know it can be a little tedious. Are there any questions at this point before I go on?
I'd like to ask a couple of questions. With regard to the existing market, you said approximately 5,000 square feet. Is that, you're just talking about the size of the existing operation?
Yes, I think that's an appropriate estimate. It's been tough for me to nail that down, Attorney Hartman. What I measured from aerial photos and from computer-aided design was 5,100 square feet. That's what I measured. There's 2 stories to the building. I measure 3,500 on the first floor, that does not include the porch, and then 1,600 on the second floor for 5,100 square feet. David did some internal measurements in the building. He came to about 4,500 square feet, inside wall to inside wall, and that's about 5 different rooms.
How big is the porch? Because isn't there, it looks like from the photographs that that's actually part of this layout.
Correct. The existing porch is 770 square feet according to the measurements. So the total retail square footage there now, I estimate is 5,770. 5,000 for the building, both stories, and then the 770 for the porch.
And how many parking spaces are at the existing location?
13.
And with the new location, give me the same numbers. What would be the retail square footage, including any exterior display area?
So the retail square footage, currently, it would be 8,460 square feet.
That's the proposed.
Proposed with 30 parking spaces. By my calculations, that is a 47% increase in the size of retail.
Will the nature of the business change with that expansion? It's a substantial expansion that, you know, I would think your aisles are narrow and existing, but this is probably not a project you would undertake just to get wider aisles. So tell us what's being added.
Yeah. So there is more to David's motivation to relocating than just, and what he's described as getting some more elbow room, right? Maybe David could speak to a little bit about what he intends to do there, but I don't know if you would like to elaborate on that, but really it's the same thing that he is doing with perhaps a little bit more room. So maybe it would, the same uses would grow a little bit. I don't know if there's any more to add to that.
Would you be willing to provide some testimony?
Yes.
All right. So, Mr. Fisher, would you allow yourself to either affirm or be sworn?
I'll get to the phone.
Okay.
You affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? Yes.
All right.
State your name for the record, please. State your name. David D. Fisher.
Mr. Fisher, do you have a mailing address of 939 Compass Road, Honeybrook?
I live at 2385 Cambridge Road.
2385.
Yes.
Okay. Do you own the property at 939 Compass?
Yes.
And do you own the property at 991 Compass?
Yes.
All right, so the question that I was asking Mr. Craddock was about how you propose to use the new building at the new location and how that would compare to what you're doing at the existing location. Can you give us any more information on what Mr. Craddock already did?
I would like to expand basically what I'm doing. Expand produce, but also I'm not going to say that I won't expand the grocery line as well. We're focusing on organic and natural products and try to expand in that area. But yes, we would certainly like to broaden it a little.
Will there be any changes in the sense of, you know, are you adding a bakery, are you adding a serving area for people to eat on site? I mean, are there any things like that that are different from what you're doing now?
The only thing we talked about would be a small area, which I don't have a lot of plans on that, but that was talked about.
All right, you say that word again, I missed it.
Deli for sandwiches.
Oh, deli,
Yes.
yeah, okay, thank you. All right, I understand. So you're considering fresh sandwich
Considering
sale,
that, yes.
and do you not presently serve food for consumption?
No, we do not serve anything at this point.
your intention that the sandwiches would be taken away, or are you gonna provide seating where people can eat right there?
I was thinking takeout. I don't intend to have any seating for dining.
Okay. And Mr. Craddock was explaining to us that there are some deficiencies with existing area for deliveries and for parking. I would like to know, have you had any incidents where there was any accidents or anyone got hurt with regard to the driveways or the deliveries or parking at the existing store?
I would say very minimal. There was one or two minor accidents, nothing major that I can recall.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Craddock or for Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. Are you looking to increase like hours or number of employees you have?
No. Number of employees, maybe, it's not here.
Are you looking to also increase like the sign size or anything you got?
We may put up a new sign, the one we have is very old and worn out.
Okay, but the hours would be the same?
Yes.
If you would be approved for this adventure, what would your plans be for the old building?
I would use it as part of the farm, and probably in the near future it would be sold to the family member as part of the farm.
One of the reasons that David took this route instead of expanding the existing store and the existing lot is that he's thinking of the next generation of ownership for the farm. And just recently, before, after I submitted the application, the farm property was subdivided into two separate lots, two large lots. And as David prepares for passing that on to the next generation, he would like to do that with the lot that the market is on, but would prefer not to have the market on that lot. That's why he wanted to try to go for relocating the market instead of keeping it on the same lot. Basically, in a sense, to keep family relations good moving forward.
That was a very key point in my decision to try to relocate.
Would you, if the board were to consider a condition on the approval of the application you submitted, that the existing market building be used for a conforming use, and if it is used for agricultural purposes along with the rest of the farm, that would be a conforming use. The retail use as it currently exists is non-conforming. So I think it would be something the board could take into consideration in considering your application if they knew that the neighborhood would become not more non-conforming. And what I mean by that is if we have the non-conforming existing building and then a new non-conforming new building, then we're expanding the amount of activity in the neighborhood that doesn't comply with the literal requirements of the zoning ordinance for that zoning district. Because this is not intended to be a commercial area in the township, it's part of the agricultural district. So, would you be willing to accept a condition that the use of the buildings that are presently being used for the market would be used only for things that are conforming, unless you got new zoning relief at some point in the future? So, is that something you would be willing to accept?
I don't see a problem with it. I guess if it has a new owner and then he wants to pursue something, it would be, he would have to apply for a special exception. Right? But yes, my intentions are to have no retail business on that property after we relocate.
were to be used as part of the farm, can you describe an example of some use that it might be put to that would be part of the farm?
I haven't thought about that too much, but it probably would be mostly storage at this point. Possibly. I don't know what they use it for. Like I said, I'm looking to sell it, so. But,
Okay. But again, I'm not sure what the board thinks about it, but at least to my eyes, it's significant to consider what the future use of that existing building would be, and to have it be used for something that conforms to the agricultural district regulations could be something that the board finds to be significant.
I understand.
Okay. Any other questions on the board?
Would you envision outside nursery like you have now?
I would be willing to come by to, are you saying if I would put landscaping, or you?
No, I'm talking about right now, you have like nursery products outside in the photos we have.
We have the greenhouses.
That's what I'm saying, you would
already
keep-
located on that property, so they would probably blend in with, we would continue to do flowers, the flowers, it would be a greenhouse business.
You would continue to sell basically the flowers outside of the building, basically like you're doing now.
I don't know if we would, like I said, the greenhouses are on that property at this point, so we could possibly sell out the greenhouse or whatever.
Okay. I want to give an opportunity to the other parties here to join in the conversation.
I did have just a little bit more in my presentation.
All right, go ahead.
I think it's important, like David said, that we're relocating an existing use and abandoning the old use. I think it's important what the character of the retail is. I also think it's important that David wants to relocate it right next door. That's different than a new use coming into this property. The fact that it's right next door and he wants to move 450 feet, I think is important. I think what that does is it shows that there's no adverse impacts, in my opinion, to the neighborhood. In fact, I think some of the impacts that we've described, one driveway, no trucks backing in on Route 10, adequate parking, some of those things could be a benefit to the neighborhood for the people using Route 10. Also, the fact that the building is going to be set back off of Route 10, it is going to have more separation and more buffering from most people in the neighborhood. So I would say that the fact that it is being moved right next door really minimizes any adverse impacts to the neighborhood, and then the improvements of the lot actually might be a benefit. I think that's all I had before talking about the
Lot size.
lot size variance.
Well, before we move on to the next topic, because we have some neighbors here, I don't know exactly what their comments or concerns could be, but I want to talk about the visibility of this use relative to those other nearby properties. And I see depicted on your plan some landscaping around some areas, but not to the west of the improvements, and one of the neighbors who's here tonight is located to the west of this property. Could you describe to us why you landscape only the areas that are shown, and could you consider additional landscaping that might affect the visibility of the new building from that neighbor's property on the west?
Yeah, I guess in short, I'm an engineer, not a landscaper, but I thought at least at bare minimum, the loading dock needed to be screened. I do know with the planning commission, one of the things that we discussed was that additional landscaping is needed, perhaps a lot of landscaping. The planning commission did talk about this being a minor land development plan, so I think there's a little flexibility with the landscaping, but I'm certainly not showing, I don't think, anything close to what would be required by the planning commission. And David has said he would comply with whatever landscaping they would desire. So, yeah, if there's other views that need to be screened, I think that's certainly open for, we're certainly open to that.
Well, I don't know any person in the retail business that wants to block the view of their property from the highway.
Right.
So I wouldn't anticipate, you know, it should look nice, but it probably should be blocked from the Route 10 visibility. But those areas to the south and to the west certainly could be affected by some landscaping.
Agreed.
So what I'm hearing is an openness to adding more landscaping, is that correct?
Absolutely.
I would agree with that.
All right. How much do you have on the lot size question?
Not a whole lot. I did want to point out that so this variance is to allow a lot less than 10 acres. There's already 2 lots that are less than 10 acres. We're proposing to combine them to make that non-conformity less. So the resultant lot will be closer to 10 acres than either of them are right now. Also, I just wanted to point out that the existing lot that fronts Route 10 currently is non-conforming with respect to the lot coverage. It doesn't meet the 20% minimum requirement. By combining the lots, I think I had it at 15% or so that we are going to apply. So, again, it's a variance to allow something that doesn't meet the ordinance requirements, but it's eliminating 3 non-conformities and replacing it with 1 basement. That's the gist of it.
Okay. Any questions on the lot size issue from the board? If not, then, as I said, if you were listening in the prior hearing, we're going to move on, but two of you, Mr. Craddock, Mr. Fisher, you are both, have offered yourself as witnesses tonight. I intend you to stay here so that if we have additional follow-up questions, we can answer those questions. Now I'm going to turn to Mr. Thompson and ask you if you have questions, first of all, of these witnesses, and if not, then do you want to provide some sworn testimony?
I don't have any questions, but I...
Why don't we swear you in then? Would you allow yourself to be sworn?
Yeah, I'll be sworn.
Is there any answer to the testimony that you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Thompson, how do you spell your last name?
Thomeson.
And what is your address?
2455 Cambridge Road.
Okay, what would you like to tell the board?
I agree, I understand completely with what Mr. Fisher's representative has said here tonight. And I agree with the existing store the way it is. On just everything he said, I agree with it. I'm familiar with the property, I'm familiar with the store. I'm familiar with the property line, that's why I said when I raised my hand that I'm not even sure that I'm an adjacent property owner because of that property line that they want to remove, they want to combine the 2 properties. Mr. Fisher has been my neighbor for over 20 years. I understand what they want to do, I understand the township's concerns. I understand why you would want landscaping. The reason I want to say something is because I want the board to understand that the distance from my property line, the east side of my property line, the property line in question, to Route 10 is probably nearly 0.2 of a mile to get the scope. of the situation. So whatever he would set his building back for adequate concerns to traffic, because the existing building as it is now, it's problematic, you know. My wife shops in his store, and I can see all the issues. The community's grown, you know, there's nowhere to go with the existing space because of the wetlands or floodplains, soil conditions, you can't go that way, there's an existing farmhouse there. I understand he wants to make it ready for, his family, the existing farm. And, the screening on my property line, which would be the east property line that would adjacent this proposed property, I have arborvitae's most of the way up that property line, east side of my property line. So the distance involved, if there was a loading dock out back, I already have mature screening. It's pretty dense. It was put in, some of it was there when I purchased the property, and I added to it as a noise barrier for Route 10. The trucks with the Jake brakes, the engine brakes coming down the hills. So I'm fairly well screened. The only thing that his representative said, I would not describe it, his current business as a grocery store. That's not what I would describe it. I would describe it more as what he said, the other use that he described. That's about all I have to say. Mr. Fisher spoke to me about it prior to the meeting, and I think it's I think it's good for the community because the community has grown over the past 20 years that I've been here, and I understand completely, and I'm not opposed to it in any way. I don't think what he's asking for is unreasonable. That's just my opinion. Thanks for hearing me.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thompson. So I just want to confirm, that you would not be asking the board to require additional landscaping next to your property?
No.
Oh, thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Thompson?
No.
Mr. Fisher, do you have any questions for Mr. Thompson? Mr. Pratt, no, okay. All right, Isaac Fisher. Do you have any questions for any of the witnesses who have already testified, or do you wish to make a statement?
Sure.
Okay. Would you allow yourself to be sworn or to affirm your testimony?
You affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Can you state your name again for the record?
Isaac Fisher,
And where do you live?
1063 Thomas Road, the next property south.
Okay. What would you like to tell the board?
Not a whole lot, just to say that we live next to them 24 years. They're great neighbors. The business has been there all the time that we were there. The relocation of it would not hinder us in any way at all. I think it's a huge asset to the community. I call it a farm store, farm market. Supports the farm that's there, and I just look at it like in a day when we see, one of the nonconformities is a retail outlet on an ag property. In a day when we see huge farms go up in houses, this versus that, there's really no comparison. This is a farm-oriented retail outlet, I feel, and supports their actual farm and others. We are far enough away that we can't even see the store, or nor can we see the new store. So we are in 100% favor and feel like it's a huge asset to the community.
Very good. Does the board have any questions for Mr. for Isaac Fisher? Mr. Thompson or Mr. David Fisher, do you have any questions for Isaac Fisher? Okay. And if there's nothing further that's offered, at this point, I would recommend to the board that we accept the exhibits that were presented by the board and by the applicant in the form of photographs, and that we close the testimony. And now the board has the option of deliberating here in public, or if you wish to deliberate in executive session, we can retire to the room across the hallway and to go further about this. What's your preference? Okay, we're going to have a brief recess for executive session to deliberate about this matter, and we will return in a few minutes. So please give us a few minutes.
Is there more coming in for Rhonda, more asset reserves?
Constantly, the application that was open,
Mm-hmm.
we got 4 more farms that were just approved.
Oh, nice. In Rhonda?
Yep, very good progress, so that went about 5 years. We get green with the map up there.
Which area?
So, it's got all those,
Okay.
one stuff in it, that's what we're up. So, memorable. This spot right here, where you bridge that top of it. For, we go for tree root. Splits right here.
Oh, maybe the,
Down here somewhere.
Okay.
I can't remember.
good.
used to be illegal.
Who owns that now?
Oh, a builder.
Here?
Yep.
Lakeland?
Yeah, they're gonna break down, they're gonna put in 24 townhouses.
Nice. You in favor of that?
Just trying to make everything more cozy.
Yeah. Travis in there, right?
I'm not sure.
Travis.
Look
No, not Travis, Stacy, what's the other guy? Troy, yeah, Troy Stacy. He lives on Gooseberry Lane. Yeah.
He just got a big win, he had to pull that land to be.
Well, yeah.
That was at Patty's land.
There's, Patty owns everything to the east.
So that's not part of what Patty should have had, or supposed to have. Could have had.
It's all part of what Patty should have had
Yeah.
for Al's.
What's gonna happen to the footprint of the house is right there too?
Yeah, they got a plan, they got a cram wall in there, kind of gather around this like central little, I think, got a tiny house or something in the middle.
On down 322, I don't think have they cleaned up trailer park yet? Level one?
Right next to the other.
Yeah.
That's where.
Did they level it? It was gonna
They've
have
been up
to-
there blasting, breaking up rocks for months.
Really?
Bulldozers, yeah, they've got giant, huge excavators that pick up cars and they're rearranging everything.
What's under there?
Got 115 something trailers.
Oh, no, sure.
Over 100. Don't ask me how they ever get that. I don't know how they got all that. The Brent one, you can bring it down the hill. Or how they actually get the last one, the pipeline. Because when they were blasting, they were shaving things over in my house. And I'm a mile and a half away.
And there's a natural gas line.
It's a pipeline, they run the gas and oil and all that stuff. Terry probably knows it better than I do. I think it runs right.
It's real close.
Huh?
It's real close.
Real close. Yeah.
If you're gonna feel it, that pipeline feels it.
Yeah, so I called up, Energy Transfer folks, I'm like, they're blowing stuff up right next to your pipeline. Can't be good for it, because that line is like 50 years old. Yeah, well, it was some guy out in Harrisburg, he said, oh, check it out. All right. Hopefully they talk to
You
you
guys
guys.
want every time you see that pile of rocks.
Uh-huh.
Oh
You know, I'll,
my, it's huge.
8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, they're out there with the giant hammer. Ting, 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 ting. And it goes all, there's so many rocks. You gotta get them all smaller. Don't be blind to that 3 years.
Yeah, this trailer parks. Default, right?
I don't know how they're gonna fit 115 in there, they were stackable. Might wind up with a tower anyway.
What's the address for the existing store?
941 Council Street.
Okay, we're going to go back on the record at this time. The board had a brief executive session to deliberate on the testimony and exhibits that were presented to the board tonight in connection with the David E. Fisher application. And on the basis of that discussion, I'm going to make a recommendation to the board for the board's consideration as a motion for a decision tonight. And that recommendation would be to approve the relief that was requested tonight with regard to the use and the lot dimension with the following conditions. The combination of the two lots has to be completed to merge them into a single lot. That the project will comply with all ordinances and regulations of the township for which no relief has been sought or granted tonight. That the applicant will obtain all necessary permits and approvals for the construction of the project as presented. That the project will comply with the testimony that was presented here tonight, and the use of the property will comply with the testimony that was presented here tonight. And finally, that the existing store at 941 Compass Road will be used in the future as a conforming use under the zoning ordinance unless new relief is sought from the township zoning hearing board. That's my proposed motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the board has an obligation to issue a written form of this decision within 45 days. If there's any person who's unhappy with that written decision, there's an additional 30 days for an appeal to the Chester County Court of Common Pleas. Are there any questions about the decision? Pretty good. That concludes our hearing tonight. Thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.
So I actually emailed today, Biddle, our 13
So, all three of you are okay.